This is our Chapter 6 test review. It's quadratic functions. And some of the things we'll be going over is factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula, graphing, and real-life applications. Our first one will be on factoring. So we have 6x squared plus 7x equals negative 1, and we have to make sure that everything is on one side and it's equal to 0. So I'm going to add 1. Since it's a negative 1 up there, I need to add 1. So now I have 6x squared plus 7x plus 1 equals 0. So everything is equal to 0 right now. That's what I want, that equation is equal to 0. So now I'm going to make my box here. And in the left-hand sides, we want to have the factors of 6. The factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. And you just try whatever group or pair that you can. Usually it's the ones closest together to each other, like 3 and 2. So I'm going to try those first. So 3x and 2x, because 3x times 2x is 6x squared. So whatever you have in the left-hand side has to equal that 6x squared. And then on the right-hand side, I have to have the factors of 1, which is easy because that's 1 and 1. So 1 and 1 there. Now I'm going to multiply this way and this way. So that is 3x, that's 2x, and 3x plus 2x is 5x, but that's not what I want. I want this middle term. I want 7x. So I know that 2 and 3 will not work. So I'm going to try then 6x and 1x. And I still have to use my 1 here because you want the factors of that last term, the c term there. So I'll put those in there, 1 and 1. And again, multiply straight across. 6x times 1 is 6x. 1x plus or times 1 is 1x. And that gives me 7x. And that's exactly what I want because that's what I was looking for my middle term. So since that's what I want, then here's my answers here. So I have 6x plus 1, and it's plus 1 because that 1 is a positive down there. And we have 1x, or you can just write it as x, plus 1 equals 0. So we just substituted this for our original equation. Now I take each one of them and set them equal to 0, and then I solve. So then I'd have minus 1, 6x equals negative 1, divide by 6, divide by 6. So, whoops. So x equals negative 1/6. And over here, minus 1, x equals 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So then I have equals negative 1. So those would be my answers right there. And to think about this, we've been graphing and everything, so that means those are the parabola. If we would graph that equation, that's exactly where they would cross the x-axis at negative 1/6 and negative 1. So those are the x-intercepts, or the zeros if you want to think of it that way. Alright, another one here. This is also going to be in factoring here. So you can see that I don't have a middle term, so really it kind of looks like 36x squared plus 0x minus 81 equals 0. So that's kind of what it looks like, but we don't really need that 0x. I just know that when I multiply from making my box that the middle term has to add up to 0. So I need the factors of 36. So that'd be 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. Well, since it's 36x squared, I'm going to use the ones closest together. Now I have to have the factors of 81. So I get all the factors of 81, and once again, they're probably going to be the closest ones together because, if you remember, when I multiply this way and this way, they have to add up to that middle term. Well, my middle term is 0x. I also have a negative in there. So I know one of these 9s has to be a negative. Doesn't matter which one, I'm just going to put it here. So now if I look at this, 6x times 9 is 54x. This way, that's negative 54x. And that gives me 0, and that's exactly what I want. I want that middle term to be 0. So here's my answers then, here and here. So we have 6x minus 9 and 6x plus 9 equals 0. Set each one equal to 0. And then you just solve your equation. Plus 9, so it'd be 6x equals 9, divide by 6, so x equals, and 9 over 6 simplifies down to 3 over 2. So don't put it in decimal, just leave it as a fraction, just simplify that fraction. So that's one answer right there. And minus 9, 6x equals negative 9, divide by 6, so x equals negative 3 over 2. And that would be my other answer. So when you're missing that middle term, really you're just kind of taking the square root of the first term. Square root of 36x squared is 6x. Square root of 81 is 9. And I have to have one of those minus or negative. So that's how I got 6x minus 9, 6x plus 9. So you can look at it that way, or you can make the box just to make sure that you're correct and it works out. But remember, it has to add up to that middle term. Alright, our next section is completing the square. And you can go back to the videos I've had for the past or look at your notes too. But our first step is to take our middle term and divide it by 2 and then square it. So 6 divided by 2 equals 3, and then I have to square it. So you're going to write your equation. Actually, let's go back to this. We need to put this on the other side. Sorry about that. So really we have x squared plus 6x plus blank, because we have to find that new c, equals negative 10 plus, then we're going to put it in there. So sorry about that. We're going to do that first. That's the first step of putting that c on the other side. Then you're going to take your middle term and take half of it, then square that, which would be 9, and that's going to be your new c. So it would be 9 here and 9 over there. Alright, so now we're going to write our equation. So it's x plus whatever you had right here in there. If that was a negative, then you put a minus, x minus it. But that's going to go right there. So you're going to have that. And then it's going to equal this over here, whatever this is. So that is negative 1. So that's going to go right in there, minus 1. Alright, so now we have to solve for x. And, oops, don't forget that's squared up there. Sorry about that. So we have to get rid of that square. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Those cancel each other out. So I have x plus 3 equals plus or minus square root of negative 1. Well, we see that the negative 1, since it's a negative 1, that represents I. So we have x plus 3 equals plus or minus I. Then we're solved for x. So they have then x equals negative 3 plus or minus I. So that would be our answer there. So don't forget too that you can always go back to the other videos I have on completing the square and get some other examples, look at your notes, go through this again. I'm just kind of going through different ones on here, just kind of a review. We've gone over all this, but make sure you go over the other videos or look for other videos on YouTube if you need some help. Here's one more on completing the square. Now this one's just a little bit different, because if you notice our a term, the one right in front, that coefficient, that number in front of the x squared, is not a 1. So if it's a 1, then you can just do like the previous slide and go and complete the square. Here you have to divide everything by 2 first, because it has to be a 1 in order to do that. So we're going to divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. So that's going to be x squared. Negative 8x divided by 2 would be negative 4x. And negative 6 divided by 2 would be negative 3. Alright, so now we can start completing the square. So we need to find our new c. So in order to do that, we got to put this c on the other side, because we need to find a new c. So I have x squared minus 4x plus new c blank, put a blank there. 0 plus 3 is 3, and then you're going to add something on there. Alright, to find that new c then, once again, just like before, we take our middle term, so it's negative 4, divided by 2, that's negative 2. Then we're going to square it. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, so that's going to go right there, and also right there. So to write our equation then, we have x, and whatever this was here is going to go there. So it's negative 2, so I put minus 2 squared equals, and then 4 plus 3, that's going to go there, which is 7. So I'm going to write it up on the top here to give myself some more room. Alright, so we have to solve for x. In order to get rid of that square, take the square root, take the square root. The square root and the square cancel each other out, so now I have x minus 2 equals plus or minus square root of 7. Add 2, those cancel out, so then x equals 2 plus or minus square root of 7. So there would be my answer. Now you can separate those if you want to show that you have two solutions that are irrational, because that negative 7 is not on that list that we went over in class of perfect squares. So these are two solutions that are irrational. So our one one answer would be 2 plus square root of 7. The other one would be 2 minus square root of 7. Once again, those represent the x-intercepts where they would cross the x-axis. So that's if we would graph our parabola from that equation. Alright, for the quadratic formula, then I've already started some of this just to save some time here. So our equation is 2x squared minus 8x minus 6 equals 0. Once again, make sure everything is on one side. So if it was not equal to 0, you need to make sure that everything is put on one side so that it does equal 0. Then you can start from there. Because if you don't have that in there, then you won't have the right A, B, and C. Especially the C. So make sure it's all equal to 0. Again, if it's not, put that number, if it's on the right hand side, over to the left hand side so that your equation equals 0. Alright, our A is 2, our B is negative 8, and our C is negative 6. I already have the equation over on the top right there, quadratic formula there. And we're going to have to find what the discriminant is, that's what the D is, how many solutions there are, what type they are, rational or irrational or imaginary, and what the x equals, meaning where are the x-intercepts, or what are the answers there. So I'm going to put my answers, or my A, B, and C into my equation. So it's negative b, my b is negative 8, so it's negative 8, because negative goes with the b, and the b is a negative 8, so that's why I have two negatives there. Plus or minus square root negative 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 6 all over 2 times 2. So negative 8 is 8, plus or minus square root. Negative 8 squared is 64. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And negative 8 times negative 6 is positive 48. And that is all over 4 then. So my next part then would be, I have 8 plus or minus 64, and 48 is 112. All over 4 there. So that would be our answer there. You can see if that simplifies down. I already know that it does. I just tried some terms. I tried to find a perfect square in 112. A perfect square in 112 is 16 times 7. So that's all over 4. So then I'd have 8 plus or minus 4 square root of 7 over 4. Then I can simplify it this way. That simplifies down to 2. Plus or minus this way simplifies down to 1. Then I have my square root of 7. So there would be my final two answers. 2 plus square root of 7 and 2 minus square root of 7. So that's where they would cross the x-axis. Now to find my discriminant, I'm going to use this equation here where it says d equals b squared minus 4ac. So I'm going to put negative 8 in for b squared times 4 times 2 times negative 6. And that all equals, if I would solve all that, 112. Now you notice, we've talked about this, that's already what was right there. That's my discriminant. So if you don't remember to do that, then just use this equation b squared minus 4ac, and that will give you your discriminant there. So now if you look at your notes from when we said if it's greater than 0, less than 0, equal to 0, what would it be? So that would be their nature of roots. But first of all, let's look at the number of solutions. We already know from right here, I have 2 solutions. So I have 2 solutions. Nature of them. From your notes and from the day in class that I gave you those listings of the discriminant that's greater than 0, less than 0, equal to 0. If it's not on that list of perfect squares, then it's going to be irrational. I know that's kind of messy, so sorry about that, but it's going to be irrational. Because at 112, that's not a perfect square. If that number for your discriminant is a perfect square, then your answer for nature roots would be rational. But since 112, I cannot take, it does not come out perfectly. If I take the square root of it, then it's irrational. And my x then is really just those 2 answers right there. 2 plus square root of 7 and 2 minus square root of 7. So on this side, let's say this was my final answer after I used the quadratic formula. So I got down to this point and I see that there was a negative. So this is just another example. After you've done all the quadratic formula, you got down to this point. Well, I see I have a negative 10. So that would be 2 plus or minus. You have to take out that negative, the negative sign, because really that's like negative 1 and 10 over 4. So we'd have 2 plus or minus. Square root of negative 1 is an I, then square root of 10, and then it would be over 4 there. So that would be my answer. That's just showing an example of an imaginary one right there. So if you have a negative in there, take that negative out, it becomes an I, and then see if I can simplify that negative 10. There's no perfect square in negative 10, so then this would just be my final answer. I wouldn't go any further than that. So if there was a perfect square in 10, then I'd find that and simplify it down farther. Alright, on this one we're going to be graphing this equation. The function is negative x squared plus 10x plus 24. And if you remember, you can put a 1 in there if there's no, doesn't look like it's a number. So you know that's your A. Your A is negative 1. B is 10 and C is 24. Alright, so your step 1 is going to be find the axis of symmetry. So you know that is negative B over 2A. So my B is 10, so I have A is negative 1, B is 10. Let me make that a little bit better. B equals 10 and C equals 24. Alright, so we have negative 10 over 2 times negative 1. So that's negative 10 over negative 2, which would be 5. So that's my axis of symmetry. So I can put that right away, my answer right there. So that is 5. That's my axis of symmetry. So I go to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and put my dashed line the best you can. And so now we have to find our vertex. So step 2, be my vertex. So you take your axis of symmetry, if you remember. Once again, you can go back to other videos and look at your notes. So we take this number right there, 5, and put that in our equation. So you have negative 1 times 5 squared plus 10 times 5 plus 24. So we have negative 1 and 5 squared is 25. You have to do the squaring first before you can multiply. Plus 50 plus 24. So that's negative 25 plus 50 plus 24. That's 25 plus 24, which would be 49. So that is our vertex. So our vertex is 49 or 5, 49, because I put 5 in the equation, got out 49. And I know my graph isn't tall enough, but we'll pretend that this is all the way up to 49. So I go there and put a dot. And I also know that the direction of it is going to be down. I don't even have to do anything calculating. The reason why, this also should be in notes there. If this number right over here up in your equation that I'm circling in blue is a negative, then your graph is going to go down. If it's positive, it will go up. So it's going down, or it's negative, it's going to be going down then. So now, to find out where they cross the x-axis, the x-intercepts or roots, you can do the quadratic formula. But you also have to get some other points there, and I'm going to squeeze this in here, and it'll be kind of messy. But from my axis of symmetry, I go 2 points to the right, so I'm going to use 6 and 7. 2 points to the left, 5 and 4. I'm going to put each one of those numbers in my equation and be able to plot my points then. So right now, if I put 6 in there, then I would take 6 squared, which would be 36. It would be negative 36 plus 6 times 10 is 60 plus 24 equals, let's see, that would be negative 36 would be negative 24, so that would be, let's see, 60 minus 36 would be 4, 5, 24, and so that would be 0 then. And that would come out to be, what, 48 then, I think it was. And you do that for each one of them so that you could plot your points, so that would be there, go right there. And if I did 7, I think that comes out to be 46. So that's going to go down. Now, to find your x-intercepts, then you're going to have to do the quadratic formula. So I know you know how to do that, so I'll let you do that. But in order to find this answer here, the roots or the x-intercepts, you need to do the quadratic formula in order to find that answer. So you're going to have to find the axis of symmetry. That's using this right here. You're going to have to use that answer and put it into your equation to find the vertex. You can just look at your equation to see if it's going to go up or down. If that number in front of the x squared, that coefficient is negative, it's going to go down. If it's positive, it'll go up. And to find your roots or your x-intercepts, then you're going to do the quadratic formula in order to get your answers there. Alright, our last part here is real life applications, and you will be given an equation, just like the one I have there, y equals negative 16t squared. Where that v sub 0 is, there will be a number there, so you don't have to worry about putting a number in there, and also with the h sub 0, there'll be a number there. So the equation will already be given to you, you just have to know the numbers, the a, b, and c, to use for your axis of symmetry, vertex, quadratic formula. So all those numbers will be given to you in your equation. So if the question asks for time it takes to reach maximum height, time meaning when does it do it, then you're going to use the axis of symmetry, use that formula to find your answer, and that'll be your answer. If the question says what is the maximum height that it reaches, or what is the maximum height, then you're going to find the vertex for your answer. So to find the vertex, you know from the past problems we've done, you have to find the axis of symmetry first, use that answer, put it in your equation, solve it, and that gives you your vertex, and there will be your answer. If the question says, when does it take, or what is the time it takes to hit the ground, or fall to the ground, hit the water, then you have to use a quadratic formula to do that. So you take your A, B, and C, put them in your quadratic formula from your equation that they are given you, solve it, and you'll have your answer. All answers in all three of these problems, axis symmetry, vertex, quadratic formula, have to be positive. So if you get any negative answers, cross them out and keep the positive ones. Why do they have to be positive? Well, if you're talking about time, time cannot be negative. If you're talking about height, distance, that can't be negative. So you have to have only positive answers. So those are the only ones that'll work in there, or which would be your answer for there. Because time and distance can never be negative, so all your answers will be positive. Even if you get two answers, two solutions, using the quadratic formula, you won't use the negative one, because you can't have negative answers. Negative time, no. Negative distance, no. So it has to be positive. And this last slide, just a continuation of the real life problem. So just kind of a recap, I'm just stating it in a different way. So anytime they're asking for maximum height, you're going to find the vertex. If they're asking for how long something stays in the air or what's the highest point, then you're going to find the vertex for that. Anytime they ask for time, though, time it takes to reach that height, the maximum height, that's going to be the axis of symmetry. So if they just want to know what is the maximum height, find the vertex. If they say, how long does it take to get to that maximum height, find the axis of symmetry. If they're asking for what are the x-intercept, anytime they say what's the x-intercepts, that means when did it hit the ground and when did it start. So you're going to use a quadratic formula to get those problems or those answers. Once again, they always have to be positive. So go back over these if you need to. I know this is probably a little bit long. You can go back to the other videos. We've had lots of notes in there. So please take advantage of the videos, your notes, find other videos, come in for help, ask for help. So you have plenty of resources here to help you out.